Introduction Part 2: The Psychology of Money. I shall adumbrate that when the price of money is considered in the modern world, the psychology of this evaluation leads to an inverted understanding where the hidden reality will exist behind our backs and be quite opposite to that which we think we understand. I'm going to use three concepts: price, cost, and worth. I shall first follow an understanding of the 20th century viewpoint of the word price, that of cost, and that of worth. And I shall show how any of these concepts differed in Adam Smith's day from the present moment. I shall define a few things here now. If I have 10 apples, then the price of 10 apples in apples is, well, 10 apples. The cost of 10 apples is 10 apples, and the worth of 10 apples is 10 apples. Likewise, if I have £100 in money, the price of this money is £100, the cost of this money is £100, and the worth of this money is £100. No problem so far. Here I have implicitly defined the cost of apples in apples and the worth of apples in apples. Now imagine a seesaw, or in America, a teeter-totter. At the center pivot is a label, and that label says price. On the left-hand side, as we view the seesaw, is 10 apples. On the right-hand side of the seesaw is £1 in money. So we can say that the price of 10 apples was £1. Was because it shall change in a moment. Now the price of apples doubles. So now 10 apples cost £2. Previously, 10 apples were worth £1. Now, after the transformation, 10 apples are worth £2. What was a ratio of apples to money of 1 to 1 has now become a ratio of apples to money of 1 to 2. What was a 1 to 1 ratio, if 10 apples can be considered as 1 unit and £1 can be considered as 1 unit, has now become a 1 to 2 ratio. Draw a table, please. We have on the columns apples, then money, going from left to right. And in the rows, we have apples, then money, going top to bottom. This is a table of price. Now we've evaluated the ratio of apples to money as 1 to 2, which is after the transformation. Please write in the northeast cell of the table the transformed ratio as 1 to 2. Now let us consider what happens if we put money on the left side of the seesaw and apples on the right side of the seesaw. The central pivot still has a label that says price. So we are basically inverting what we are doubling. So previously we doubled the price of apples, now we double the price of money. But wait a minute, you might be saying the price of money doesn't make any sense because the price of money has to be evaluated in money. But I said the universe will exist behind our backs. I say the exchangeable price is however much it will swap for of any commodity. In this case, it's apples. But the 20th century psychological viewpoint does not concur with this, my viewpoint, when we consider the price of money. Our erstwhile condition, which is our previous set of circumstances, is that the £1 will exchange for 10 apples. So the exchangeable amount of money is £1, and this will swap by 10 apples on the market previously. By the 20th century viewpoint, when the price of money doubles, this infers that the amount of money required doubles. Money doubles. So now £2 will exchange for 10 apples. This is the same as saying that £1 of money will exchange for 5 apples. This is because the 10 apples will now cost £2. So if I have £1 which will exchange for 10 apples, and the price of this £1 doubles, then £1 will exchange for 5 apples because £2 will exchange for 10. It is the exchangeable price of this pound which has risen. More of it will be required, more pounds will be required to exchange for the commodity, which is apples, than before. So £1 has just transformed to £2, where the units of apples remains the same. I really must stress again that this is the 20th century viewpoint about what happens by a change in the price of money. It does not concur with the 18th century viewpoint. So in the southwest cell of our price table, we have a ratio of 2 to 1. That is 2 units of money to 1 units of apple. Recall that in the northeast cell of the table, we had 1 unit of apple to 2 units of money. So far, our table is syntactically inconsistent, but it doesn't matter what we pay in, we get the same result. We are dealing with exchangeable amounts. If I have a Rolex watch, the price of which I am selling for £20,000, and if I have 400 Casio watches, the price of which each is £50, and if I now abandon money altogether and use a direct bartering scheme, I may swap 400 of my Casio watches for one of your Rolex watches. Now, if the price of my Rolex watch increases, then fewer Rolex watches will swap by 400 Casio watches, which is the same thing as saying that more Casio watches will swap by one Rolex watch. Returning to the evaluation in terms of money, If your Rolex watch has transformed in price from £20,000 to £30,000, then after this transformation, it will swap by 600 of my £50 Casio watches. Now let us call your Rolex 10 apples. What is in a name? Would not a rose by any other name still smell as sweet? It doesn't matter what we call the variable. 10 apples is 1 unit, is the name for 1 Rolex as 1 unit. And let my 400 Casios be called £1 as a unit. Thus, if the price of your 10 apples doubles, it will now exchange by £2 of money. The ratio as the amounts has transformed from a ratio of 1 to 1 into a ratio of 1 to 2, where the apples were placed on the left-hand side of the seesaw. No problem so far. Now let your Rolex be called £1 in money, and let my 400 Casios be called 10 apples. When your Rolex doubles in price, it requires more Casios to exchange by it. It requires 800 Casios. But wait a minute, your Rolex was called £1, so surely if £1 would double in price, then it would require 20 apples to be exchanged for it by the 18th century viewpoint, not 5 apples to be exchanged for it by the 20th century viewpoint. This viewpoint is non-intuitive to the modern interpretation. What I am saying is that by the 18th century viewpoint, the price of a commodity is the amount of something else which will exchange by this commodity. The mistake we made was to say that when the price of money doubles, the amount of money becomes transformed into itself doubling. By the 18th century viewpoint, when the price of money doubles, the amount of money becomes transformed by itself halving. Because the 20th century, or is it the 21st century point of view, is inconsistent, we know it's incorrect. Depending on where we place money, is it on the left-hand side of the seesaw, or is apples on the left-hand side of the seesaw, we get a different result. We know that Adam Smith was correct because he's logically consistent. The same format as the price table by the 18th century viewpoint has the transformed ratio of 1 to 2 in the northeast cell and the transformed ratio of 1 to 2 in the southwest cell. The semantic meaning of the word as money does not alter the syntax of this table. It does not alter the syntactical meaning. The table is syntactically consistent in the 18th century. This ends my discussion about the word as price.